Welcome back to our shooting and recruiting series where we bring you our knowledge and expertise in the market and answer your questions for tips and advice. Now, shout out to our connections on LinkedIn who submitted their questions for advice. Again, if you're not following us, head over to Peopleconnexion Recruitment Australia, or if you're located in Papua New Guinea, Peopleconnexion PNG. By popular demand today, we're going to be talking about CV tips and tricks. Now, there is a wealth of information out there on the internet about what makes a good CV, what are the red flags, what are the templates, what's the best things to talk about. And today we're going to bring you tips straight from our recruiters on what they look for in CVs and what speaks to them as a bit of a red flag and what to look out for. So number one, we're going to start with formatting your fonts. Keep them clear and concise and consistent. We don't want to be seeing any cursive, curly or creative fonts. We're talking about keeping to Arials, Calibris, Times New Romans, something which is clear and professional. Number two, pictures. Pictures are the thing that we're like, do we add them? Do we not? Unfortunately, when you use pictures, you're risking your hiring manager or the recruiter judging your CV based on your looks. It's in human nature, it's what we do, unfortunately. So you want your CV, you want your first impression of your CV to be about your experience and your projects and the content, and unfortunately not what you look like. So number three, without killing all the creative juices, I'm going to say don't use any color. If you do use color, keep it to the headings and keep it very professional, no neons, no yellows. Shades are best, and you want to be making use of white space as well. So when you're laying out your sections, making sure you have that paragraph space. And when you're laying out your sections, you want to be writing to bullet points, no big chunky paragraphs. Number four, executive summaries. If you don't know what an executive summary is, it's that short little paragraph at the top of your CV and is the exception to the rule about not using paragraphs in your CV. So your executive summary sits right up the top and is a short synopsis or a short little blurb about who you are, what your experience is, and what you would bring to this role that you're applying for. So number five, qualifications. Make sure you're either starting with your qualifications or you're starting with your professional experience, but most of the time we recommend qualifications. Now, your qualifications aren't just your tertiary studies. Make sure you're including any achievements, any awards that you might have received, but also any professional associations you might be a member of. If you have experience in any specific industry related qualifications as well, or certifications, make sure you're including those. So number six, your experience must be listed in chronological order. Now, what that means is your heading experience, the very first piece of experience or role should be what you are in currently or what your most recent job was. When you're listing each of your experiences, you must start with what the role title was and then the date. So when you began and when you finished. Now, it's super important not to leave any gaps in your experience. So when you've got 1 or 2 years that isn't accounted for, and unfortunately, we're going to think things like, well, were they let go? Were they made redundant? What were they doing in this period? Now, it's very easy just to put a short little sentence in that speaks to what you were actually doing. So if you were on maternity or paternity leave, you were on holidays, you went on secondment, or you took long service leave. Just make sure you're filling in the blanks. Number seven, what were you actually doing in that role? So when you're listing your experience, you want to be talking about what your roles and responsibilities were. Really high level, again, keeping it concise, 2 or 3 high level bullet points. If your role is project-based, you want to be listing what those projects were, and especially if there's a dollar value to it, make sure you're including that also. Number 8, your CV should be no longer than 4 pages. Number 9, contact details. Make sure they are up to date. Now, this isn't just saying for yourself, but for your referees also. We know that people change jobs, so just make sure you're keeping tabs with their new contact details. Now, last but not least, you want to make sure you are spell checking your CV. The last thing recruiters want to see is if you're in a senior position, if you're a qualified leader, and you've got typos in your CV, unfortunately, it's going to sing massive red flags of eye for detail and just accountability for quality. So make sure you are overlooking your CVs and making sure there's no typos. So that's a wrap. 10 top tips for CV writing and making sure you don't miss the just minor things that unfortunately recruiters pick up on like that. Thank you again for tuning into our Tips and Tricks Tuesdays post. We love bringing you these Tips and Tricks Tuesdays, so we want to hear what you guys want answered.